And this is true breakthrough information that you will likely never hear about on television, online, in magazines or newspapers, and certainly not from your doctor. Sit back, relax your body, open your mind, and get ready to receive some powerful information that is going to change your life.
Yeah, so I'm really looking forward to this. It's a therapy that's not too widely known. As with many things, how did you end up working in craniosacral therapy?
My way in was actually as a patient, as a client. In my early 20s, I was at quite a crossroads in my life, having no idea which way to go, what to do professionally, what to do personally. I was full of tension, had all kinds of neck problems, and went to go and see a craniosacral practitioner. And I found the sessions to be, first of all, really powerful, but secondly, really effective in helping me to move through all kinds of accumulations of stresses and unresolved patterns that I was holding in my body. That experience really touched me, really impressed me. I was already exploring, studying various forms of body work, but then I decided to enroll on a 6-year osteopathic training here in the UK, and included in that osteopathic training was craniosacral work.
What is craniosacral therapy? Because, like I said, I imagine many people listening, even if they've heard of it, they may not really know and understand what it is or how it works.
I think the simplest way to introduce it is to say that it's a system of light touch therapy that is working with subtle movements that express themselves through the body. The principle is that if these subtle movements in the body are playing freely, without restriction, without impediment, then there is a state of health and well-being. But because of maybe an accumulation of stresses, traumas from a whole range of different factors, from physical to emotional to nutritional to all kinds of different reasons, the way in which the body is able to express these subtle movements can become restricted and impeded. Consequently, we see this as a primary precursor to the development of symptoms, diseases, and pathologies. So the work is really about helping to free things up.
Is that a good example?
Actually, the movements that we're working with in craniosacral practice are described as involuntary movements. So they're not movements that result from deciding whether to pick something up, turn your head, move your body. The founder of this work was an osteopath called William Sutherland, and he identified that there are subtle rhythmic movements that can get expressed through the body, or that do get expressed through the body in health. But these rhythmic movements they're connected in terms of body and mind. So how we feel, how we think, what we do will influence the expression of these rhythms. But they are essentially involuntary rhythms. They're movements that happen really as, let's say, a different kind of function to the function of voluntary motion. But the principle is that if there are no restrictions, if there are no accumulations of stresses or traumas in the body, then the body moves in very kind of full, balanced ways without these kinds of distortions. The patterning that we experience actually starts right at the very beginning of life. I mean, even we could say a single cell at conception is responsive to its environment. Right from our early embryological development, this whole process of patterning and conditioning can begin. And of course, it continues throughout the whole of our lives as we meet new situations or have a car accident or a fall or an accident, whatever it might be. So in a way, we become, we could say, walking autobiographies of how our health and how our, as you said earlier, how our life is able to kind of meet the experiences that we have. And the experiences that we're not able to resolve may remain with us as patterns of movement and also patterns of function and patterns of behavior. We know that the body is constantly being reformed, constantly being regenerated, which is really where we could say the potential for healing and recovery is, that we're not a fixed system. If we can create the conditions whereby this natural process of regeneration occurs, all kinds of conditions, all kinds of situations may be resolved, may be responsive.
It also reminds me of kind of the DNA argument, and how some people will believe that your DNA is fixed and it is what it is, and it dictates your life and it dictates your health. It dictates who you are and all that. But of course, they've proven that your DNA also is adaptable, as you said earlier, and changing over time.
Absolutely. It's the conditions that are important. It's what is called the epigenetic factors, the conditions that can help to switch that DNA on or switch it off. That will determine whether or not somebody will move forwards into a so-called inherited condition or inherited disease.
Tensions, energies, stresses, whatever they are, do these involuntary movements, do they affect our regular voluntary movement? So if I want to bend over and pick something up, does the fact that I have this energy and this involuntary movement pattern in my body stuck, does it affect my intentional movement?
Yes, absolutely. The founder of this work really asked or researched for many, many years, well, what could it be that is driving these subtle rhythmic movements, getting great results when he was doing that? And he came to a very, I would say, simple conclusion, which is by no means simplistic, and that is that it is none other than the life force itself that is generating these subtle rhythms. So essentially, this is what we would call a vitalistic therapy. It's an approach that appreciates the presence of vital force as a prime mover and prime organizer of the human body. So it's very similar in that regard to some traditional forms of medicine, such as Chinese medicine. If there are places where these organizing forces, these organizing rhythms are getting bound up or restricted, let's say as a result of an accident or a shock or a birth trauma or even some kind of earlier trauma than birth trauma, then this is a pattern that we may carry with us. I believe the human body is always doing the best that it can. It's always going to seek the best possible health given whatever circumstances, whatever conditions are present. That this natural expression of health in the form of these natural rhythms may become compromised, and this is where we may start to experience symptoms and dysfunctions. But we're never none of us are just physical human beings. There's our feelings, our thoughts, our emotional experience. So similarly, a shock from a loved one or emotional stress or strain in a relationship, this will all influence how we hold ourselves, how we carry ourselves, and will influence the expression of these subtle rhythms and consequently influence how we function. So we really need to look at the whole person, we could say the relationship between the body and the mind and the forces that organize us.
When you think about craniosacral therapy, and again, it seems obvious to me that it would be something that can benefit anyone and everyone. Are there particular conditions that it's better for, or situations where it's more helpful?
The treatment is not really symptom-based. This is a treatment that will increase our overall health. It will support our overall health. You don't actually know. When you support the rebalancing of the physiology, when you support the expression of health, all kinds of things can start to improve. Now, having said that, I would say a lot of patients will come in to see people like me for so-called stress-related conditions, back pains, headaches. I also treat a number of children and babies, particularly if there's been difficult birth or maybe a difficult pregnancy. So it could be feeding difficulties, sleeping difficulties, things like colicky pains in babies. So these kinds of things will often bring people for treatment, but the range of possibilities is quite wide because the application of the therapy is not so much on treating the condition or trying to get rid of whatever the condition is present, but in supporting and increasing the expression of health in the body. And when you do that, that's when the conditions seem to respond.